Hello everybody and welcome to this painting video with myself, John. In this one we're going to be checking out the battleship from the Ning Jing faction, if I got that right, from Dystopian Wars. This model drew my attention particularly because it has a real nice mix of that industrial heavy aspect, heavy armor that you expect on a battleship that we've seen from World War II and before, but also has this mixture of very traditional Japanese styling. So there's a lot of slate, like terracotta slate roof and all that sort of stuff. I don't know the proper names of it. You can let me know in the comments. So as always, we're going to be aiming for table ready, or maybe just a little bit higher than that. To be honest, there's no real serious big techniques in this. It's all about patience and choice of color. And you'll see and you'll hear as I go through the video what choices I've made and why I've made them. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one, and without any further ado, let's get stuck in. So to begin with, let's talk about priming this miniature. So it was first aerosoled with Chaos Black all over, and then after that I've taken Citadel's Grey Sear and basically dusted it until nearly all of the pure black has gone. So what we have is a little bit of shadow, a little bit of shading here and there. It makes it look quite interesting in this sort of primed and undercoated stage, which is good for us because, as usual, we're going to be trying to get this table ready, and we want to focus on using contrast paints and a little bit of traditional work as well. Why not? So it's a battleship, right? And nothing screams battleship to me than a good grey, a good solid heavy looking color to base it all on. So our first stage is going to be taking some Basilicanum Grey. That's our contrast paint, the first one for this video, and we're going to be applying that to basically everything that isn't a decorative detail. And what I mean by decorative detail is I'm going to be making a contrast between this heavy armored behemoth but has all this finery all over it and all these symbols and gold details and such like that. So we're going to be focusing on that to get the deep heaviness of the ship through first. So we're going to take our Basilicanum Grey and we're going to start to apply it to anything that we want to be in this sort of deeper kind of battleship-esque grey. And I'm not too worried about going over details, because in my head I've already picked out the colors for most of these other locations. So we're going to focus on getting a nice heavy grey on those areas, make it all nice and dark, so that when we start putting some flashes of color in here, it's going to really set off the miniature and it's going to make it really stand out, and that's exactly what I'm hoping to achieve here. So even over these details, I'm not too concerned. They're going to probably go gold as a bit of embellishment on top of all this heavy armor and stuff like that. I also want to point out, when I first seen this miniature and I seen those 3 guns, I was like, this is essentially Yamato. This is like your flagship. This is a big guy that's here to really cause some trouble and be imposing on your table. So thinking out what you want to do with something like this is definitely important. If you have a bit of real world inspiration to work from, I think your end product, regardless of how you paint it, if you're going full traditional, or if you're going a lot of contrast paint or anything like that, it honestly doesn't matter, so long as the end result fits what you have in your head for it. So, like I said, I want a lot of embellishments to be really stand out on this miniature as we go along, whereas a lot of the more mechanical, I guess, mundane details that a ship has to have, like its funnels and the mechanical stuff that makes it work, if those are dull and industrial, and you have a lot of embellishment work to play with, then make sure that industrial stuff doesn't stand out, but in its own right is playing a part in the miniature that you're painting. Particularly on this model, like there's a great mix of industrial heaviness to it, as well as these finery, like all these fine details here along the sides above the paddles and stuff like that. There's tons going on here. And I could spend days on this miniature and probably not be entirely happy with it. So you're going to have to compromise, or I'm going to compromise a little bit by deciding what details are going to go what color, what details I want to accentuate, and what details I want to just basically do what that's doing right now, sort of fade into the background a little bit, but be present in their own right. And you can see that straight away. We're already building on that soon to be contrasted with brighter colors. So we'll just push on with this, pick out whatever else we're going to do with the Basilicanum Grey. We've got tons of detail up over the top here that we're going to work with. And yeah, when we come back, we'll move on to the next color. With the Basilicanum Grey down, we can see this sort of contrast starting to build up between the industrial, mechanical, warlike stuff and the more decorative embellishments on the ship. And it really does already become quite striking as you see this, just this one color being put down. So the next thing we're going to do is work on the decking. There is a fair amount of wooden decking on the ship, and what I'm going to do is go with another contrast paint. This is going to be Cygor Brown, and we're going to run this into the decking just to give us a little bit of a sort of brown woody sort of texture going on in there, and hopefully we may need to thin it a little touch as well, just to get the pigmentation right for that. So a little bit of water on the brush, and then we'll just start applying it in there. Now hopefully it looks like it wants to bead and do all sorts of weird stuff, so we're going to have to just work with it and see how we get on. That may be a result of the priming used or something like that, but that's okay. We'll work on it, and I'll maybe switch up my brush size a little bit. That one's a bit too small. Move up a little bit of a bigger brush here. So I'm not too worried about some of these details on the deck as well. I'd rather go back over them with some regular paint, but for now we want to make sure we get the decking color in and that it looks okay. So I think that should be okay. That looks dark without being too dull. Bear in mind we are going to be contrasting it quite significantly with all the decorative features on the model as well, so and there'll be a fair amount of detailing work to go in after that. What I might do is stop at a point and say, you know, it's table ready at this point, but let's get a little bit more in there. But we'll see how that goes. I think we're going to be on the right path anyway. So even if this decking, some of you might consider it to be a little bit too dark, I'll be happy enough with that, because it's just another detail. And the areas that we're putting this into are going to be surrounded by lighter colors, and it should work out okay. So we'll just get on with the decking here, and when we come back, we'll start looking at some of our more decorative colors and where we're going to go with them. With the Cygor Brown now down and dry, we can have a look at the decking. And yeah, it's quite dark, but let's not worry about that. It's not really about having that stuff be in a high contrast, because what we're going to be doing now is going to add some contrast. And we're going to be starting with Blood Angels Red. Yep, another contrast paint. So what's this for? Well, this is going to be the base color for our fleet, basically. If we're looking at doing this as a fleet, the red is going to go in tandem with some gold, and that is going to be one of the primary colors for our fleet. And what I want to do is to start base coloring the embellishments. So we have these areas here along the sides. I want the inner parts of those to have that red color. The rest of it around this is going to be gold, so I'm not too worried about getting the paint into places I don't need it to be, because generally the details around it are going to be gold. So there's two ways we could do this. We could do this by painting it all gold and then filling in with the red. But in this case, we're going to be doing the red first and then carefully picking out the gold later on. So we're just going to work away at this and just show you a little bit of what these embellishments are going to look like. Kind of get a feel for what the scheme is going to be as it progresses on. And I think it's going to be quite striking. I'm quite looking forward to seeing how this turns out. So I'll just keep going here. And this is what's nice about contrast paint, is that it will work its way into these deeper details and it'll sit there and it'll maintain its color quite well. Kind of acts a bit like an ink, but an ink with a bit more of a heavy pigmentation in it. So it should look interesting enough without just coming across as a completely solid color. Although it probably will now that I've said that. So up here as well, I'm going to do the what I assume is the bridge of the ship. I would guess that's the bridge. It doesn't matter if we get into the portholes or the windows, because we'll be going in with some black wash after this. You can sort of see where we're going with this. And what I'm thinking for all the roof tiling and stuff, I think I'm going to go a sort of a terracotta tile. Try and keep a lot of these more traditional colors going on. I know the box art has a lot of jade and greens and stuff in it there. But we might maybe have room for some of that. I'm not sure. I'm kind of liking a more simplified sort of maybe red, gold and brown. Make it look quite opulent. Now I know that a lot of Japanese architecture and stuff like that would prefer a lot of jade and sort of a real mixture of colors, but what we're working with here as a miniature is something that would risk looking too much like a Christmas tree to our Western eyes. So we don't want to mix the red and greens too much, because they're traditionally a sort of a Christmas period sort of scheme that runs together quite a lot. We're even risking that a little bit with the red and gold, but not to the same extent. And yes, I have had to Google image the traditional sort of Japanese slate roofing just to see what sort of colours there were around. And there's blues and greys and blacks and stuff like that, and they're all very interesting. But the terracotta sort of colour is definitely something I was looking at with a bit more interest. So we have those in. Yeah, I think we'll just do the sides of this part of the superstructure as well. We'll definitely paint in that yin yang symbol a little later on as well. Do the traditional black and white with maybe a gold edge or something like that. This is a battleship. This is something you definitely want your opponent to know is one of your bigger ships, one of your more impressive machines. And it's this, from history, a battleship, a big gun battleship, would be a status symbol. And I think we can harness that idea a little bit in the painting of this one. So there's always room to go a little more opulent, since we're in a fantasy setting, so it's all good. It's all a lot of fun. And not too worried about the edges of these panels, because they will be going gold a little later on. So if we go over a little bit, it's not too bad. The gold trim and stuff that we put down will act as a bit of a tidy up step. So we'll do a nice big bit of red across here. Again, we have another yin yang at the back. So we'll avoid it. Again, I find the trick with doing a table ready quick scheme to be use a fair amount of different colors and different techniques, just you know, contrast is definitely your friend, but in this case, because of the detail we're trying to aim for, contrast is great for the base. So once we have the bases down, we then get a bit more elaborate with some of the other colors that we choose. So we're just going to let this dry momentarily, and then we're going to come back and start to work on the roofing. So the Blood Angels Red now dry, we're going to move on to the roofing. And for the roofing, I've chosen from the Panzer series of Vallejo, I've chosen beige brown. We're going to be using that in concert with a contrast paint as well as the gold trim. And I think what we're going to get out of that is something interesting and quite appealing looking. So I do have a proper terracotta brown, but I don't think it would really make that much of a difference. So we're going to just start applying this. And at this point, we're really not too worried about going over into areas that are still the base colors, because a lot of what we do after this is going to be gold trim, and that is going to essentially be our tidy up step. We're not going to be too worried about that. We're just going to get this color down. And I know in the box art it's a jade green, but I really want a slightly more accurate sort of slate roof look. You know, even if it's armor that's been painted or sculpted to look like roofing tiles, it's kind of irrelevant. I just want it to have that aesthetic to it. So this will take a little while, and we'll do this. So, and after that, it's all about gold trim. And gold trim may take us some time. But that's okay. I think for such a big model in your fleet, I think taking the extra time to do some of these steps is really going to give you something that you can be proud of, and you can look at and go, yes, that's my ship, that's my battleship in my fleet, that's my flagship, that's the one that I love the most, or, you know, holds a sense of pride for the fleet. Whatever lore reason you want, you know. It's so very honourable to look this good. You can see that's going to be kind of interesting, and once that's shaded and whatnot, it's going to look very cool. So we'll continue on with this, and when it's all dry, we'll come back and we'll start to show you all the gold detailing we're going to put on. So at this stage now, we have the roofing all painted in, and I think it's looking quite good. It's an interesting contrast, actually, having that, what looks like should be a colour that would have been more fitting for the decking, actually looks really good on the roof. So we're keeping that sort of the industrial heaviness, and we're getting this more decorative stuff on the outside, which is getting a bit more interesting looking. So at this stage, we're going to move on to the gold, and that's going to be a lot of the work here to start decorating. So for this, we're going to be using initially Retributor armor, and we're going to be doing every piece of trim that we can, and this is going to take quite a while. So naturally, we're not going to show you all that, but we're going to be doing probably the entire dragon's head here and around this big cannon, the edges of the top edges of the roof. We'll be doing bits like around here, like that, carrying it up onto these, and just trying to do as much as we can. And what that's going to give us is a very ornate looking finish. So it really is going to be a case of, you know how to base coat by now, so we're not going to show you a lot of that. And I'm just going to push on with it and see what we get. The whole idea, remember, again, is to get something that's table ready, but at the same time, it's a big centerpiece of our fleet, and we really want to show off the ostentatious nature of the design of this miniature, because it has this beautiful form over function sort of thing. It's definitely a big, heavy war machine with all the big cannons and all the secondary turrets and stuff like that. But it has this very traditional style to it, and we really want to, well, in this case, I really want to accentuate that more traditional styling, and I want that to be something that really stands out if a fleet is ever painted like this, you know, a full fleet, I think would look very interesting. So we're just going to get on with it, get my head down, do all the gold, maybe tidy up a couple of pieces, you know, depending on how that turns out. And then when we come back, we'll have all the gold down and we'll be ready to shade it all in. Well, what a difference a bit of gold and a lot of patience does to this miniature. That gold has really just made the whole thing pop. Really, really bright, really, really interesting looking now. And as we move around the ship, you just get that ostentation really showing off. And the contrast between the mechanical, heavy mechanical battleship side and this ostentatious, I'm the flagship kind of feel is really, really apparent, and I absolutely love it. So we're going to move on now to a bit of shading, and we're going to, I was initially going to use a contrast paint for this, but I decided to change my mind because I can, and we're going to go with Seraphim Sepia, and we're going to use that on the gold, the red, and the roofing, that beige brown colour. So let's just see how this goes down. And we're probably going to be fairly liberal with this. I wouldn't say maybe, well, we're going to be liberal and see what happens. And yeah, hopefully it'll just add a little bit of a shade. And there's a bit of dried wash that came off on the brush there. We don't want that there. I can see I made a little bit of a mistake that I haven't tidied up. We'll have to live with that now. I was going to go Agrax, and I thought that would be a bit too dark. And then I thought maybe the sepia will do a good job and get into the lines and the edges a bit more accurately than the contrast paint would. So that's what we're trying, and I think we're on the right path here. And you can even see I love the filigree on the sides, and this sepia should really tone it in and tidy it up a little bit. I'm always tempted to go a little bit darker because on a small miniature like this you kind of want to define edges a bit more, but I feel like there was just something about the idea of putting the sepia down would help in the long run. And I think it should work fine. It's not going to define the roof texture just as much as maybe I was hoping it would or was planning it would, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that either. So as long as we get a bit of shading going on in these areas where we've put the gold, I think it'll do a good amount of work for us. Certainly looks like it's going to help quite nicely. Adds a bit of weight to that gold and the brown as well, so while maintaining a sort of a brightness to it, a liveliness. Because I think Agrax would have darkened it a bit too much and we would have started to lose that bright, nice contrast that we have going on. So all we'll do is we'll go over all these areas with the sepia, and then when we come back we'll start to add a little bit of detail with some black washes, and yeah, we'll see what we've got at the end. With the gold now shaded, you can sort of tell on camera what that looks like. You can see it a lot more clearly on the front cannon and these big capstans and stuff like that on the deck. And it just adds a bit more richness, a bit more depth, and a little bit of shading to all that great gold detail. So if you're like me, you're probably not satisfied. And to be fair, that's okay. I'm more looking at the Battleship grey, the Basilicanum grey, and thinking there's not enough there. It doesn't feel heavy enough anymore. So yeah, that's just what I'm like. And what I'm thinking of doing is giving that a coat of Nuln Oil just on the grey areas, just to help maybe sharpen some of those lines a little bit, deepen a bit of the shading, stuff like that. We're going to do that off camera, as well as another step, which will be to paint the yin yang on the sides and on the back. And what we're going to be using for that is my Stynylrez black and white primers, because I'm going to paint the whole circle white, and then I'm going to go in with the black primer and just paint in the symbol correctly. I want to use those primers in particular because they're a bit thinner, they lay down really well, and how I'm going to do it is paint the circles white. I'm then going to put the black wash over all the grey and include a bit of the Nuln Oil wash over the white area just to shade it a little bit. Then I'll paint the black onto the symbol, and I think at that point we're probably going to be finished, and it's just going to be a couple more steps, just simple steps really. I never like doing fine work under camera because it's a nightmare for me sometimes. But that's the plans. We'll get some Nuln Oil into the windows as well, just to tidy them up, and probably into the ends of the cannons and stuff too, just to deepen that detail a little bit more. But what we have currently is a very charming, almost ready ship to use, and I'm liking it. I like this one a lot. So we'll go ahead with our Nuln Oils, and yeah, when we come back, we'll just have the ship finished. We'll give it a bit of a matte varnish as well, I think, and just let you have a look at it with everything done. You know, there's not much more to do, but we'll make sure everything's done, and yeah, we'll wrap it up there. And here it is, our battleship all done. The yin yang kind of painted. I need to practice my freehand, seriously. But the black wash over the grey and the matte varnish over everything has really helped really make this ship look heavy and solid, and looks quite intimidating actually. It's a very imposing shape. I love, like, as soon as I seen the 3 cannon across the top, I fell in love with it. I didn't even notice that this was a cannon until later on in the front. So yeah, this is a really nice miniature, and has tons and tons of detail, plenty of stuff to play around with, and it just looks like I've drawn a letter P on the back there. Huh. Yep, definitely need more practice with that. But overall, this is a great miniature to paint. You are going to enjoy having this as a centerpiece to your fleet for sure. And just take your time with it, guys. Like, at this point, this is where I would call it table ready. And if you want to do more hard edge highlighting, perhaps, maybe a bit more shading on the gold, a bit more highlighting on the gold, yeah, absolutely, it's what I would recommend you do. What we could have done differently to speed this process up a little bit, perhaps, was to spray it in a grey primer, a darker grey. So a Mechanica standard grey would have done the job very well with just a black wash over it, and then we could have went in with some highlights. But having the contrast down as the base already gives us a little bit of highlighting and a little bit of shading before we do anything else. And the Nuln Oil wash really just sort of brings it down a little bit further, tightens up some of that shading as well. But overall, great miniature to paint, a lot of fun. Just take your time and enjoy it. And yeah, until next time, everybody, please take care, stay safe, and I will see you again very soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.